Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Very happy to take a call on the Rugby World Cup Empowering Bill. The Rugby World Cup, like all New Zealanders, I'm excited and looking forward to the Rugby World Cup that's coming up around the corner next year. It will be the largest event that New Zealand has ever staged, and so as a result there are good reasons why many of the rather extraordinary powers that the Minister has been given in this bill should be passed through this House to deal with unforeseen circumstances and to ensure that things can all be ready and that the event can be successful for New Zealand, because we're looking at a television audience of close to 4 billion people, 70,000 international visitors to New Zealand over that 6-week period. This is going to be a very big event for New Zealand. I do want to pick up some of the issues that were raised during the Select Committee. I'm absolutely amazed at the comments made by Jackie Dean. I don't think that she was at the same Select Committee meetings that I was at if she is claiming that the Labour Party raised our concern about the unfettered power this bill gives Murray McCully at the 11th hour. In fact, I think we raised that concern at the very first meeting that this... At the first reading of the bill and at the very first meeting when we went through the briefing with officials to ask exactly why it is necessary to give Murray McCully this extraordinary power that is not offered ministers in almost any other piece of legislation that we could find, and we could not find any examples of why it would be necessary. So I'm quite concerned about that, and I'm absolutely staggered that Jackie Dean claims that we raised that as a concern at the 11th hour, because in fact we raised that concern all of the way through. Let's be very clear about what this does. It gives Murray McCully the ability to overturn decisions made by judges, or the judge, heading the panel, the experienced 7-year lawyer who will be on the panel, all of the relevant experts. Murray McCully can overturn their decisions, and he can say, no, I'm going to demolish this historic building, I'm going to close this road. He can overturn recommendations that they have made, and we don't think that's right. Now, there may be some, I guess, would be willing to accept that he could have the power to turn down a recommendation, to take to put a stop to something, but to proactively approve something that the Commission has recommended. Yes, to go with the status quo, I should say. So he should have the power to overturn a recommendation, stick with the status quo. But to proactively approve something that has otherwise been declined is not a power that we think that the Minister should have. This is not an urgent piece of legislation in the sense that we're not dealing with something that has happened. We're dealing with something that may happen in the future. So we have got the time to work through this and get it right. We went through it at the Select Committee. We heard evidence on it at the Select Committee. We received a lot of advice at the Select Committee, and yet there was no advice or no evidence put forward to suggest that the Minister should have this power. Let's be really clear about what it is. This is Murray McCully wanting to have the power to meddle in things and wanting to have the power to control things. And of course, we're not talking about a minister who hasn't got in trouble before for meddling in things. We're talking about a minister who actually has a track record of meddling in operational issues and the departments and agencies that he's responsible for. And so I have no confidence that giving Murray McCully the power that this bill does is going to lead to responsible use of that power. And that's one of the reasons I think it's very important that in the committee stages of this debate we pass the amendment that is being put forward by Trevor Mallard to ensure that the Minister cannot abuse the powers being provided under this bill. I want to talk a little bit about the different treatment between alcohol and gambling, because that's something that Trevor Mallard raised in his first reading speech. I think it would be fair to say Trevor Mallard and I don't necessarily agree eye to eye on this particular issue. We have a moratorium on gambling, on new gambling venues in this country. Now, we are bringing in cruise ships to act as temporary hotel accommodation. And so we want to make sure that they can operate effectively as temporary hotel accommodation when they're parked up at the wharves, and that means they can provide food, they can provide alcohol and so forth. But why should they have an exemption that allows them to run gambling facilities when we wouldn't allow that on land? We wouldn't allow any other... in fact, they would be prevented by law from opening a gambling facility without a legislative change to the Gambling Act in Parliament. And we think that should apply, I think, that it's a conscience issue. I think that should apply to any cruise ships that are bought in to provide temporary accommodation as well. So it's different from alcohol. You can apply for licences for alcohol. You can't apply. And I'm looking forward to an extensive debate with Trevor Mallard about this during the committee stage, for hours, in fact, during the committee stage of this particular piece of legislation. Because if the Murray McCulley is so determined, if Murray McCulley is so determined to force through these additional powers that we don't think he should be able to have, then we will make sure that this bill is debated line by line, clause by clause, all the way through the committee stages, including the provisions on gambling and alcohol, where we have some disagreement amongst the members of the opposition. The second part to do with gambling that this legislation deals with are the pokie machines in the pub. Now, I'm happy for pubs to be able to extend their liquor licensing hours to work around the Rugby World Cup schedule, to make sure that people can enjoy the Rugby World Cup. I don't see how going and sitting at a pokie machine in any way contributes to the Rugby World Cup experience that we want to be able to offer New Zealanders and those who are visiting this country. I see that there is absolutely no justification for saying that we should extend the hours that the pokie parlours attached to pubs are open in order to facilitate a successful Rugby World Cup event. And so this bill does not allow those venues operating pokie machines to use their special Rugby World Cup liquor licences to extend the hours that they can have the gambling pokie machines operating. If their hours are extended through the special licences, they will have to close off the pokie machines for those hours that they would not otherwise be open. So if they would already be open for the period of time that the match is taking place and so on, then they will be able to have the pokie machines operating. But if there's a special licence applying during that period of time, then they would have to shut down the pokie machines during that period of time. And that's something that I think I totally agree with. This is about ensuring people can enjoy the Rugby World Cup. It's not about extending the opportunities for people to go and to gamble. And
he's afraid of booze.
I'm quite comfortable. I'm quite comfortable with people being able to go and have a drink, have an extra drink. I think that it's perfectly all right for people to grab a pint and to stand there watching the big screen on the telly and watch the game and enjoy the Rugby World Cup experience that we want people to be able to have. I don't see that gambling's necessarily a part of that. Now, overall, gambling on the next try. Well, this bill doesn't impact on that at all. It doesn't impact on the TAB at all.
What about the TAB?
The TAB no, it doesn't impact on the TAB in the pub. But actually, maybe that's something we should clarify during the committee stages, and I think we might actually look at some amendments on that during the committee stages, and hopefully the Minister will take some calls on that during the committee stage of this debate, so that we can clarify whether in fact the amendments that we made at the Select Committee will impact on the ability of the TABs operating in the pubs to take bets during that period of time. I'm pretty sure, in my view, that we've in fact only restricted the Class 4 gambling in pubs, but we should double check. Debate it thoroughly to make sure that if there has been an unintended change to the ability of the TAB to operate in the pubs, that we deal with that during the committee stage, and there may be some further amendments. Overall, the intention of this bill is good, to make sure that the Rugby World Cup, a big event for New Zealand, is successful. Many of the changes that the bill proposes are supported by the opposition. The majority of the bill is supported by the opposition. There's one point that we're sticking on, and that's whether or not the Minister should have these extraordinary powers that no other Minister has, that no other law appears to offer. And of course, frankly, I don't trust that the Minister would exercise them responsibly. So we're putting forward an amendment that would stop him having that power. If the government agrees to support that amendment, then the opposition will support the bill progressing through its remaining stages. We will not be voting for it on the second reading because the government have indicated that they won't support the amendment being put forward, and therefore we're uncomfortable with the powers that the Minister is being offered. So really, whether this bill goes through with a wide party support across Parliament is going to be a matter for the government to determine. They can support the amendment Trevor Mallard has put forward, and then they will get wide-ranging support through Parliament, or they can insist that Murray McCulley has these extraordinary powers conferred upon him, and it will not be supported by the opposition. So the choice really now is over to the government.
David Clean.